But if the system is proven, your job is to follow the system. If you're not a follower, and if you don't take direction well, and if you're leaving your job because you hate your boss telling you what to do every day and how to do it and when to do it, you're not a fit for franchising. We have more emerging franchise concepts than ever in my career, going back to 1979. We have more investor opportunity. You have to know who you are graphically. Then you can start talking about what product or service do I really want to represent, because I'm passionate.
All right, in this episode, I sit down with Dr. John P. Hayes, who is a legend in the franchise world and someone you will want to get his insider knowledge from. We talked about some really juicy topics that are going to blow your mind, whether you want to buy a franchise, you are a franchisee already, or if you're a franchisor. John is one of an elite group worldwide that has actually owned and operated franchises, including serving as the CEO of a major American franchisor company and advised franchisors and franchisees. He was the president and CEO of the famous Homevestors franchise, also known as the franchise brand that has the "We Buy Ugly Houses" billboards. And he led the brand with over 250 franchisees. He was also an editor for the world famous Zig Ziglar and has been known as a go-to expert consulting for some of the best franchisors. Outside of that, he is the author or co-author of 18 nonfiction books, including Franchising: The Inside Story, Start Small, Finish Big, You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar, and most recently, Buy Hot Franchises Without Getting Burnt. So let's jump into this episode of the Franchise Empire Show. All right, everyone. Welcome to the Franchise Empire Show. I'm excited to meet with John today. John, thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, Tariq.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you have such a diverse background in franchising. You've been in franchising for what, 35, almost 40 years now?
Yeah.
Hopefully you don't mind me saying 40. That.
No, I don't mind. I'm an old guy with a young heart.
Yeah, young heart for sure. But it's cool because you've seen so much change in the franchise space, over the years. I'm curious, given that you've worked with franchisees, you speak at a lot of conferences, you speak for the International Franchise Association, different broker conventions, etc. What do you see that it takes for someone to become a top performing franchisee? Like, what is the difference between the people that wind up being average or fail between the ones who actually end up in that top 10 or 20%?
Well, that's a great question. And I think it's one of the most important questions. We probably could spend an hour at least. That's a class that I would teach or a book to write because unfortunately, I don't think it's as easy as many people want you to believe when you are shopping for a franchise. It's a little more complex. There are several moving parts. And yet, that said, it's easier than any other methodology. But you got to be the right person and you got to select the right franchise. And I think it boils down to those 2 points. Right person for franchising, to be a franchisee, and select the right franchise for you. And both of those issues require quite a bit of explanation. And too often, people will say to me, well, my brother-in-law bought one, and he recommended that I buy one, and I did. My brother-in-law's doing great in North Carolina, and I'm sucking air in Florida. And they want to blame the franchise, but that's probably not the case. So, I think I wrote one time a newsletter, "You're not your brother-in-law," and not in a sarcastic way. The brother-in-law, he is the right person for franchising, and he selected the right franchise for him. This guy might be okay for franchising. We need to find out. And the business that he bought, the franchise that he invested in, probably not for him. This happens all the time. I was just at a convention where I spoke over the weekend, and a guy came up to me after my presentation and said, I bought in April. I hate it. But why did you do that? Today, it's so easy. At least this part is easy to check out both. Are you a good fit for franchising, and which franchise should I invest in? But people don't take the time to do it. They get encouraged, or they hear the excitement in another person's voice about how much money they're making or how happy they are, et cetera, et cetera. But they don't check out those two key points.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm excited to unpack this. And, that's one of the main reasons why I created our system, our zero to profitable franchise system, because, we could just do the whole free broker thing like everyone else does and just trying to sling franchises. But, I felt like, having been a franchisee myself, I feel really passionate about what you're talking about. And it's one of the things that I talk about in the content too, which is in order to be successful as a franchisee, it starts first with buying the right franchise, and you have to do your due diligence. And I see it all the time. People who come into our program, we have to talk them out of buying a specific franchise because they're like, I found this one. They got one franchisee. I just love the model. What do you mean? There are 7 other brands in the same industry, right, that have a proven track record, that have 50, 100 franchisees. Why in the world would you select a franchise that has 1 or 2 franchisees? It just, why would you put that risk on your shoulders? It doesn't make sense.
No. And, people will say to me, well, somebody had to buy the first McDonald's. Somebody had to buy the first of everything. That's true. We don't know, unless we can go back and read the history, we don't know that those people were successful when they bought the first 1 to 10 franchises. I'm sure there were some failures in that mix. So again, it depends on, are you the right fit for this?
So who is the right fit and who isn't the right fit? And how do they figure that out?
Yeah, another great question. So if you are a personality that really enjoys doing it your way, when you go buy a car, you want to lift the hood and look underneath to see how it works. Don't buy a franchise, because you're always going to be the person who's trying to make it faster, better, bigger, different. And that's not the job of a franchisee. And people don't like this when I say, your job is to follow the system. If the system is proven, and it's not proven with 1 to 10 franchisees, that's too soon. But if the system is proven, your job is to follow the system. If you're not a follower, and if you don't take direction well, and if you're leaving your job because you hate your boss telling you what to do every day and how to do it and when to do it, you're not a fit for franchising. Go get a different boss. Don't invest in a franchise, because the circumstances are not going to change. You're going to be taught a system, and you are expected to follow the system. You do not own the system. You cannot change the system. You're expected to follow the system by penalty if you don't. So you got to take that very seriously. If you're not the personality who says, all right, I'm not so entrepreneurial. And when franchisors come to me and say, we're looking for some entrepreneurs, and I say, you're looking for the wrong people. Entrepreneurs do not buy franchises. Yes, people with some entrepreneurial tendencies can really do well in franchising. But if you're a 10 on a 1 to 10 scale, and 10 is the highest of entrepreneurship or the highest entrepreneurial skills, you're not going to be a good fit in franchising, most likely. Now, you might buy multiple brands, and maybe that helps you with your entrepreneurial tendencies. But if you're looking at one site for a period of time, and you're a high entrepreneur, a high E entrepreneur on the scale, you're probably the wrong fit for that business, because you don't want to follow the system. You want to change it. And the franchisor doesn't want you to do that. So you've got to know that, all right, I'm willing to submit to the system. Promise to do it for a year. before you come up with any. Keep track of all the changes you want to make, and keeping in mind the Big Mac came from a franchisee. The fish sandwich at McDonald's came from a franchisee out of their need to change the system. And with some experience, the franchisor needs to listen to you then and maybe consider adopting your idea either for your part of the country or for the entire world, wherever they may be located. And what I do with everyone, including every one of my students, and anybody who I want to be in a partnership of some kind with them, even a marriage, DISC profile, DISC. It's so easy to do. It takes 10 minutes at most. It's low cost. I give it for free to people. I give it to all my students the first week they come to my class because I don't know their personality without looking at a DISC. And then I know, here's how I need to teach this person. Franchisors make a huge mistake because they'll say to me, I don't know what's wrong with this franchisee. We gave him the same training we gave everybody else. Well, there's nothing wrong with that franchisee. And now, could be a wrong fit, but probably the problem is with you, franchisor, because some people are auditory, some people are kinesthetic, some people are visual. Try to teach a visual person with an auditory delivery, they're not going to get it. It does not work. And shame on you, franchisor, for assuming that everybody's the same. They're not. It's not going to work that way. So the buyer, the franchisee, pre-franchisee, has to do the protection. You have to protect yourself because franchisors in many cases are just going to take your money. And in many cases, while I think the broker consulting community is fantastic, they do a great job for many franchisors. They don't all do a great job. And they need a commission as well. And they're likely to say, well, where can I get the biggest commission? I think that's where I'll steer this person. That may not be the best for them. So if I'm looking at a franchise, I know, first and foremost, I've got to protect myself. Find out, am I cut out for franchising? And is it food franchising or service franchising? Is it multiple units? Is it a single unit? There are lots of things. Even before I pick up a directory or go to an expo, I need to know, does it make sense for me to do that? I have to do that because franchisors probably not going to tell me and the broker's probably not going to tell me. And then a lot of other things come into that, the cost. And then at some point you'll say, well, now let me go find the right franchisor for me, the one who understands that I'm a D or I'm a C, or the one who understands that I learn kinesthetically. Is your training program kinesthetic delivery? And, these are things that you must do for yourself. The government has protected us in many, many ways in franchising, but they don't do the due diligence for you. So I think that, is a first step. And I'm sorry, I keep going, so cut me off.
No, it's all good. Yeah.
Redirect me.
So I get multiple emails a week from companies asking to run ads on the podcast. I could have ads if I wanted to, but I don't. So there are two ways that you can help to support me and the podcast to keep it ad-free. First is to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment, even a smiley face if you have nothing to say. The YouTube algorithm only shows the video to more people based on the likes and comments on the video. So your comment could help someone get exposed to this, and not to sound too cheesy, but it could legitimately change their life. Lastly, go ahead and share this with someone that you think will enjoy this episode. Maybe someone who loves business and entrepreneurial stuff, or maybe it's someone who's been saying that they want to own their own business for forever. You can message it to them directly or share it on your social media. It would mean the world to me. You guys rock. Enjoy.
We share some of the same core passions and I think belief systems overall. Are you familiar with Zoracle? Have you come across Zoracle? And what are your thoughts on Zoracle?
I think it's great. There are a couple of them that are franchise specific. And franchisors will come and ask me about what they should use. And I think you should use what makes you comfortable and what fits your budget. Use something. Zorkel's a great product, and there are others that can be used. Everything is built on disk. It was created in the 1950s by the same professor who created the lie detector test. And it has been proven internationally millions of times. I don't charge for it. Now, if a franchisor comes to me and says, we want you to do the disc on our 50 franchisees, and then we want to figure out the profile of our franchise, are we a D-driven system? If so, we better find D franchisees. So we want you to profile our prospects before we award them or sell them a franchise. All right, I think that's great. And yes, I do charge for that service because it's time consuming, but well worth the investment to get the kind of franchise you want. I learned all that. I'm one of the few people that I started in 1979, the year the franchise law was issued by the FTC. That's when I got into franchising as a writer, and continued then to be a marketing content writer, a promoter, international promoter for numerous brands in the 80s. And so that's how I got into franchising. But then I realized I would be interviewed on a radio program, and I'd written the book, Franchising the Inside Story, which really got credibility in the eyes of the media, because if you write a book, the media will say you're an expert. And I took only 6 months to write that book, interviewed 100 people, never worked for a franchise company. So I kept saying to myself, you don't really have any credibility in this. Yeah, I did in marketing, and I did in many of the things that I was doing, but I'd never owned one. So I became a franchisee on a couple of occasions, always with a partner, because I'm not an operator. And then ultimately, I became the CEO of We Buy Ugly Houses. And at the time the founder died, we had 220 franchisees. And I wanted to know who are our top 10, because they're probably making us the most money, 10 to 20. They're making us the most money. And who are our bottom 10 to 20? Because they're squandering our money. They're asking the same questions over and over, and they don't validate our system. And what do we know? Who are they? We better be attentive, particularly to the top people. And I asked for, this franchisor had given every prospect a disc. And so I asked for the rank-ordered list of the franchisees by how much money they paid and include their disc. And in the top probably 35 or 40, there was a D in their profile. In the bottom 35 to 40, there was no D in their profile, not in the first position, second, third, or fourth position. So it told me very clearly, this is a D profile business. If you're an I and you buy into that system, you're going to struggle unless you bring a D in with you, which you can do. You can hire a D.
And John, explain for the people listening, because I'm very familiar with DISC. We use it particularly when we hire for a team. I actually use something called Are you familiar with TTI? Have you ever heard of TTI?
Yes.
Yeah, I use TTI, and I wound up becoming, I guess technically a distributor, just because we run so many ourselves to get the discounted pricing. But can you just explain the DISC and the difference?
Yeah, so DISC, DISC, and D is dominant or driver. And if you want to know the extreme D, think Donald Trump. Ds are highly motivated, goal setters, real goal setters. They're not New Year's Day making a wish about what they're going to do. No, these are concrete goals. Few people set concrete goals, and then nothing gets between them and the goal. And if you do, you'll get fired, you will be thrown under the bus, and you might go to prison in some cases. Michael Jordan is a high D, a nicer personality, but don't get between him and the goal on the basketball court. You're going to get run over. But the I, and that was Ronald Reagan, the great communicator, I's love to talk and communicate. I's love people. I's love getting to know people, all about people. But I's procrastinate. I's forget what they promised to do. I's need someone, a good administrative assistant, keeping them on track. Then there's the S personality. Think Jimmy Carter. And the only problem, Jimmy Carter has to be, I think he's still alive, but he's been on his deathbed for a long, long time. But Jimmy Carter has to be the most decent president we've ever had, most lovable, he and his wife. But if I ask you, what did Jimmy Carter do in the White House during his 4 years? People can't tell you that. That would never happen with a D or an I. But the S's are team players. The S personality does not like any kind of conflict. The S personality wants to be involved, but they don't want to take a chance or a risk or be on the front line. And then there's the C, the competent or conscientious personality. And these are folks who, they really can live without other people. They can go to the basement, take a set of data, and you can ask them a question. Can you tell me yes or no? Should I do this? Give them 2 days, give them a month, whatever it's going to take. They only want to deal with data. They always expect the other shoe to drop, even if everything looks great. Well, you can spend a lot of time trying to award your franchise to a C, and it's going to take a long time. And chances are they're not going to invest because they know another shoe is going to drop. I just don't know where it is. So depending on, having a C in a business like elder care, good to have a C because they're not going to make decisions or do things that could end up in a disaster. They're going to be very, very cautious. And the S is good to have on your team as well because they're very loyal and they are team players. But you can't depend on the S and the C to go out and get business. In We Buy Ugly Houses, S's and C's did not buy houses. And if you didn't buy a house at the right price in We Buy Ugly Houses, you made no money. So, and the S's and C's didn't make money, and they complained constantly.
Interesting.
Well, I understand why.
Okay, so here's what I think this is going to be really interesting. If you don't mind, I want to share I want to give people an experience, right?
Yeah.
And a visual, right? Because I am visual. I know that, and for the people that will watch this on YouTube, so I want to pull up my profile, my disc, and if you don't mind, will you just explain to the audience my personality and kind of what I'm like? I think that will be really
be
interesting.
Happy to. I've never seen it, so this is great.
Yeah. So this is my disc. So tell us about me.
You don't have any S in your personality. No, very little. Okay, now I see.
So
it.
what does that mean?
S is the steady. Okay, let me begin at the beginning. What's most obvious, you are an almost off-the-chart D. So you are a goal setter. You are quick to make decisions. You don't need anybody else to get things done. You'll work on your own. Whatever the task is, whether it's your system to go get it done or you buy somebody else's system to go get it done, you are the profile that every franchisor and every employer wants, because that high D. D's get things done, but be prepared. They won't do it your way necessarily. You won't know that they're not doing it your way necessarily. They may get you into some trouble. They may get themselves into some trouble. They don't aim and focus, and how's that saying go? They fire first. Fred DeLuca at Subway, who I wrote a book with, would always say, you fire first. You don't worry about the aiming. Okay, that is a D personality. S or C would never, ever do that. But the D's will. And there are fewer D's in the world than any of the other profiles. So they're very popular. They get paid a lot of money because they've proven themselves. They get things done. But they irritate people. Most people don't like D's. They put up with them for whatever reason. Maybe in the case of a Donald Trump, you like the fame, you like the glory. You wanted to be in the White House. You wanted to serve the country. Okay, that's great.
So Ds are polarizing in a sense.
Polarizing, absolutely, yes.
And so
But we can't get a... Go ahead.
Yeah, how does that high D then work with, I have a pretty medium C. I mean, my C is in the 40s. So how does that work?
Yeah.
Because those are kind of conflicting, aren't they?
Yes. Is your I don't see your screen now, so...
Yeah, I took it off. So my I is about
your D
a
is,
60.
Your D is what? It's...
You want my natural or adapted style?
The natural, yeah.
My D is 100. My I is 65.
Yeah.
My S is 5. And my C is about 45.
Okay. So in this parlance, you are a high D, high I. So here's what's good about that. Your I is your people skills. So you are fortunate in you like people and you want people to work with you. And so you, unlike a Trump, for example, you will cultivate relationships with people. You're not totally against working with a team, building a team. You're going to direct it. You're in charge. You're going to make the decisions. But you, because that I is so high, you at least know I got to let the people speak up and voice their opinions and come to a consensus. That's a better path. So that DI combination in business, extremely popular. High I, high D, high D, high I, extremely popular. Then when I look at your C at a 45, that's a good dose of C. And the C, remember, says hit the brake. The D hits the accelerator. It's the accelerator to the floor. But people with C in their personality, and you have enough of it there in your personality that you are still cautious some of the time. And with that high I, that's very helpful because you're likely to say to people you trust, whether it's your spouse or your partner or someone, a mentor, you're likely to be vulnerable with them and say, I'm not sure that I'm right here. And you'll say it to yourself. You know, the C is telling you, Tariq, hit the brake, hit the brake. The D is telling you, get it done, keep going, get it done.
Which can create some inner conflict at times.
Oh, definitely. I have that too. I have that DC combination as well. I'm a DI, but I have that C in there. And it drives me nuts. And I want to tell them that, shut up and let me go get it done. Well, at times when I've done that, I have failed. I've screwed up. You know, and I know that's, I worked too quickly. I did not heed the advice of my profile. Hit the brake. And then you don't have any S, essentially. So that doesn't mean you're disloyal. But loyalty is not an issue that you spend a lot of time thinking about. It means you're not a great listener on a team. The high S, you know you're a high S if people always come to you and say, Tariq, I got a problem. I'd like you to hear it out and help me out. People aren't coming to you. People aren't coming to me with those kind of queries because we are not as patient. We're not known to be as patient and as kind. Not that we aren't. We definitely are in certain circumstances, particularly with our children, particularly in our marriages, particularly with families. But now we're talking about work. At work, no, we don't. You have less S than I would have. So it's not so important to you to be the great team player. And remember that S won't take a risk. So they won't give you an answer, yes or no, because they don't want to be wrong. And they won't step out and speak up because, again, they don't want to be wrong. But if you rally them, S's are good for you because you have that DI personality. And the people who have a good deal, if maybe a high S is someone who you can get, they have loyalty. They have a desire to be part of a winning team. Okay, the S's are great for you to convert, even though you don't have S in your personality. You don't have to. So if I'm an employer, I'm going to hire you because I know this guy is going to go get it done. If I'm a franchisor, I want you to be one of my franchisees. Now, if S is the essential in operating my franchise, I wouldn't know that if I'm not looking at DISC. And you'd be the wrong fit, probably for any kind of child care, elder care, doing mentoring, tutoring programs. No, you're the person to go out and get the business, get people registered, get them to subscribe and sign up. You will do that all day and all night, but you're not going to take care of them on the backside. And this is why it's a little more difficult to be successful in franchising than people think, because it's not just about selling the product or get people to subscribe or pay you money. You got to do something for them. And D's are not good at doing something for other people. We're in it because
it's like a
we
Michael
want to
Jordan.
get things done, but we like ourselves a lot.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to how the best players aren't always the best owners or coaches, right? Michael Jordan was a great player, but him owning the the Charlotte Hornets, his team never did very well. I think he just sold them too.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to complement, at least, kind of pivoting to, the team around you. Like my director of operations is a higher S,
okay,
right? And which makes sense. And so, really having that complementary personality is important. And at this point, I've gotten the feedback enough over the years of how intense I can be. And so there's times where I will adapt a little bit more than I think my adapted graph will show. But I think it's certainly very interesting. Okay, so let's pivot from here. So, we talked a lot about the right person. Who is the right person for a franchise? But the part of it is selecting the right franchise, which we talked about how the DISC plays a factor in that. And, maybe a question potential franchise buyers could ask is, hey, like, what sort of profile are you looking for? But what should there's over 4,000 franchises in the U.S., so what should buyers be looking for in a franchise? Like, what red flags, what should they stay away from? And what are the things that really represent, hey, this could be a really great franchise system overall?
Yeah. Well, these are difficult questions to answer, and a lot of mistakes are made every day. We have more emerging franchise concepts than ever in my career, going back to 1979. We have more investor opportunities. Pre-pandemic, franchisors did not have. In fact, investors are not wanted. We don't want the silent partner. We want owner-operators. That was always the message. Not so much today. There are people out there looking for the investor. So, first of all, you have to know who you are graphically, like you just detailed. And with that, knowing your profile, then you can start talking about what product or service do I really want to represent, because I'm passionate about it. I think passion is overrated by a lot of people. I have a passion to be an NFL star. Well, I've never had a chance, or an NBA's never had a chance. A jockey never had a chance. I might have a passion for it. It's not what's going to happen. So you've got to know that profile. Then you've got to be thinking, okay, product, service. What kind of business do I want? Easy to categorize them. 4,000 plus, maybe 4,500 brands, but they've all been categorized already. And if I'm a D, well, where will a D do well? And what do I need to be aware of? So I might say, well, I think elder care is the future. People are getting older, living longer, nobody to take care of them. That is a jackpot of a business. I want to be in the elder care. And you're a high D. Well, that's great. You'll be able to do the part to promote your business, market your business, get out there and meet people, get contracts, get people signed up. But now, who's going to hire the caretakers? Not you. Who's going to nurture the caretakers? Not you. That you've got to think, do I bring a partner in? Or a high D is not going to do that well. I have a graduate who's an off-the-chart D, and he is so typical of that high off-the-chart D. He sent me a note during the summer a few years ago and said, I'm looking at buying this franchise. Here's the FDD. Would you take some time and review it and let me know what you think? If there are red flags, we could meet for coffee and we can go over it. I do this with my students all the time. I've got 7, 8, 9 of them either already are franchisees or they're in the process of it. And I will review FDDs with them and talk about the things we're talking about right now. Well, when I got back to him, which was like 3 days later, he said, okay, I'm glad to know that. I just signed the franchise agreement today. Okay, that's a D. I wasn't surprised by that at all. And he did well with that franchise. He and his sister did well. He went on to buy a second franchise, and he bought a franchise that takes a lot of S and requires a lot of C, of which he has very little. And I knew from the beginning, this is going to frustrate you because you don't have, you'll get things done, but you don't have all the capacity that's needed to run an elder care type of franchise. And he has struggled. Now, the way you compensate for that is if you know you don't have S and you need it, do exactly what you did. You hire an S. You're going to drive that S nuts, and that S is going to drive you nuts at times. But if you both know why that's happening, you'll learn how to love each other and how to work effectively. So I see this all the time. The fellow who told me over the weekend that he bought a painting franchise, painting houses, and he just did it in April. And he said, I hate the business. And I said, why? And he is not good at doing the C work of the business, coming up with the proposal. How much is this going to cost? He's not good at that, hates that, always thinks, as C's also think, I'm missing something. Well, he knows he's missing something. He doesn't know what to do. Fortunately, he found out that his wife, that's her strength. And the two of them teamed up. And they now go out and sell to people together. They just started that, I think, in the last couple of weeks. And he said, I really like that. I said, okay, there you are. That might lead you to like this business. Your wife and you are a team. You need to approach it that way. So there are all kinds of ways that you got to think through this. But if anybody who buys a Homevestors We Buy Ugly Houses franchise and you're not a D, you're going to the bottom of the heap because you cannot buy a house without being a high D personality. You can't buy it right. You can't buy it effectively unless you've had some coaching in that area. So every franchise has its profile. If you don't match that, then it's probably not going to be a successful venture.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the podcast episode so far. One of the most consistent things that we hear from people that reach out to us is that buying a franchise feels really confusing. There's so many options out there. It's a scary decision. They don't know how to vet or do the due diligence or really narrow down on the right franchise for them, and then they really feel alone in the process. You might be the only one in your family who's ever pursued buying a franchise or being an entrepreneur, or maybe you've tried to start a side hustle before, or other businesses like me. Like before franchising, I was not able to crack the code on entrepreneurship. I'd like to invite you to reach out and work with us. We've helped many clients buy franchises, get them profitable, or buy resale businesses that are thriving. I'm talking about highly profitable resales, great value. We've allowed many of our clients to actually quit their job right away and replace their income immediately. So if you want to work with me and my team on finding or buying a franchise, doing due diligence, vetting it, or resale, then go ahead and go to tarjohnson.com/consulting, and we're happy to see if we can help. All right, enjoy the rest of the episode.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And so you mentioned your students that you work with, and tell us a little bit about PBA, Palm Beach Atlantic, and what you do there and how it works, and this whole concentration in franchising. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, well, great, it is, and this begins when we go back to class for the fall semester. Begins the 7th year of the Titus Center for Franchising. and I've been there from the beginning. I was actually teaching in Kuwait at the time the opportunity came up. A client of mine named Titus gave the university, small private university across from the Intracoastal, downtown West Palm Beach, beautiful setting. You can go to the ocean every day if you're a student here. Many of the students do. He gave them $1.5 million because he's a franchisor. He's got 8, 9, 10 brands. His son went to PBA. He found out through his son bringing friends home, wow, these are great kids. It's a private school, but these kids are not entitled. They want jobs. They want to work. They're well-grounded. But they knew nothing about franchising. So Ray Titus said to the president of the university, I'd like you to teach franchising, and I'll give you $1.5 million to endow a center for franchising. And the president said, well, we'll take that. But now we need a PhD who knows how to teach franchising. And Ray said, he's in Kuwait. We just have to convince him to come home. Well, I had been in Kuwait 7 years, very, very happy there, wonderful experience. But I was also getting up in years and thinking, how am I going to go back to the United States? When am I going to go back? And what am I going to do? Or I could just stay in Kuwait and retire, as many Americans do, and come home after that. But this was, I think there are times, seasons of our life, and I'm in the fourth quarter season of my life. And you want to do something different in the fourth quarter than you did in the other three. In the first one, you're exploring, you're trying to figure out who am I and what do I do? And in second and third, you're building. And in the fourth, there's still something to build, but now you got to give back. This is the opportunity to teach and to share and to mentor and guide and help. Zig Ziglar said you can have everything in life you want if you will just help enough of other people get what they want. That's teaching. It's also franchising, and I combined the two. So it's just perfect for my life. So I got hired to build this center for franchising. My students earn a concentration in franchising. It's not a major, not a minor. It's 12 credit hours, including a 90-hour franchise internship. And when they graduate, it doesn't matter what they have, what they majored in. If they majored in business, great. If they majored in communications or leadership or political science, great. Tell the employer, but most of them don't want a job, but they start out with a job. Tell the employer you have a concentration in franchising. And if it's a franchise company, one of the 4,000 plus, you are going to go to the top because nobody has a concentration in franchising. I think we're the only university that teaches that. There are a bunch of universities that teach at least a course in franchising, but only at Palm Beach Atlantic University can you get the concentration in franchising. And Titus started this process of, I want to hire people out of college who know what a franchise is. And my students know more than first-year franchisees about franchise. They know how to read an item 19. They know the FDD. They know about franchisor-franchisee relationships. They know about matching their personality to the personality of the franchise. I bring in at least 15 speakers, people like you, Tariq. I bring them into the classroom each semester. And some are franchisors, some are franchisees. Sometimes they are brokers. They come from all walks of franchising. So my students get, through these 12 credit hours, they get a great background in franchising. And anybody who wants a job, they get it. They'll get 2 to 3 offers in their senior year. Now, so far, 7 of them are franchisees. 2 more are in the process of figuring out should they be a franchisee. So it's not very, I've graduated 51 students with a major in something and a concentration in franchising. And we didn't start graduating 7 years ago. We started graduating only about 4 years ago, 5 years ago. 100 students so far have been in at least one of my classes. And the numbers are small, but they are making an impact. I just had one of my students do internships, and I always say to the people who provide them, if you hire one of my students for an internship, first thing you'll do is call me and say, how do I get 2 more of these? And unfortunately, I don't have 2 more. I've got about 65 in the program right now who are working their way to graduation.
It's so cool. And I mean, really the younger generation, right, is our future. And it's fascinating to me on through my YouTube channel, how many younger, like high school kids and are, opting in and going to our website and grabbing our free guides and stuff. And we'll reach out to introduce ourselves. And they're like, oh, I'm just in high school. I'm doing something for a school project, or I want to own a franchise after I graduate or after I get out. And I'm like, man, that's so cool. It's so awesome. And the first time I had thought about franchising, actually, I remember I was 19 years old, still living with my parents. And I started looking up franchises, but quickly got discouraged when, I saw, $300,000 net worth requirements and, different things like that. But I think more and more opportunities are popping up. And the more these kids can learn that there are people that have the capital out there who would love to do a business partnership and have them operate the business. Because we then get on the other side, we get hit up from a lot of people where they're like, I want to own a franchise, but I don't want to operate it. I either have an existing business or I have a job or so on and so forth. And that could potentially, be a great opportunity for both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. I see more and more of that happening. And this is all indicative of the Gen Zs. These, I'm old enough to be their grandfather in most cases. I'd like to say old enough to be their father, but I'm actually, up there. So I'm in the fourth quarter. I could be their grandfather. And to see them, first of all, I didn't know, am I going to identify with the Gen Zs? Well, my students are outstanding. I don't know. I'm just blessed that I get great students through Palm Beach Atlantic University. They're not lazy. They're not entitled. They don't expect me to do anything for them other than share the information that I share and direct them and guide them and introduce them to people that will help them. That's what my job is. And that's just a wonderful experience. But 97% of them want to be business owners. And they don't struggle with, well, I got to follow somebody else's system. I heard a guy say recently on social media he'd never become a franchisee because he doesn't want to help build somebody else's dream. Okay, I think that's stupid. So we wouldn't have a McDonald's in that case if everybody thought that way. And okay, we wouldn't have a Chick-fil-A. That might be a better choice. We need a Chick-fil-A. We need McDonald's too.
I think, for me personally, my dream wasn't to be a franchise owner. My dream was to be an entrepreneur, and franchising was a vehicle that has supported that journey. And for me, having, 9 failed businesses prior to franchising gave me the structure that I needed, the support that I needed, the system that I needed. And I consider it a great stepping stone. And so even if someone says, hey, okay, I don't want to be in someone else's system, well, great, learn how to run a business and operate it and the system and the structure through franchising. You don't need to be a franchisee forever. The great thing is you can sell your business and probably have a higher likelihood of being able to exit successfully than a traditional business. What did you say?
Yeah, absolutely. We did a study that demonstrates that 2 businesses that do the same thing, the franchise business is going to get a higher price because it's a brand and people will pay more for that. But there are many people with a lot of entrepreneurial talent who buy into franchising. I have an advisory board. 93 franchise professionals support the Titus Center and are on my advisory board. And they meet twice a year on campus. So I have a guy like John Clancy. John Clancy owns 45 Planet Fitness gyms, 35 Smoothie Kings, and 36 or so Buff City soaps. He lives in Jupiter, Florida, just up the road from me. Most of those businesses are in the Midwest. He doesn't go into them, but he's the owner and the CEO. He's got partners. Tell this guy that franchising is buying into somebody else's dream, and he'll just laugh. But he knows he can sell these for millions when he's ready to do so. He's probably, I don't know that he's 50 yet. And to have him in my classroom speaking to my group of students, that just amazing. Where do you get that experience? You don't get it any place in the world but at Titus Center. And I'm very proud of that.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Last question before we wrap is I'd love to hear, number one, what really excites you about the franchise industry right now and the future of it. And then on the flip side of that, what concerns you about the franchise industry and the future of it?
So I never thought I would be as excited about the investment opportunities that are developing as I am. In fact, I don't own any franchises right now, but I am tempted at times to do that because these opportunities are now becoming available, and there are so many service businesses which don't require a $300,000 commitment or net worth in many cases. So this is, and I also, I need to say this correctly, I'm a college professor. I believe in college education. Not everybody needs to go to college, however. Just like not everybody, I believe franchising is the greatest methodology, but not everybody needs to buy into a franchise. Same thing in college. When you come out of college and you have a degree in philosophy, history, English, journalism, political science, whatever it might be, if you don't have a skill set, who needs you? You spent all this money getting a college education, and the employer says, well, what can you do for me if I hire you and start you out at $75,000 a year? Truth is, you can't do anything. You learn from textbooks that are generally out of date and aren't effective in the real world, from professors who probably haven't been in the real world for the last 10 or 20 years, if ever. So you're not equipped. And when you go to a franchisor, what can you do for me? Well, I have a marketing degree. Great. Everybody has a marketing degree, and everybody got a 4-point. But if you don't have skills that you can prove, and I think this is part of the excitement about franchising. Now there are opportunities for more people. But what worries me, there are going to be some new franchise laws coming down the road. I'm all for franchise legislation. I think that is why we're ahead of everyone else in the world. Yeah, the FDD is clumsy and costly, and you've got to reveal a whole lot of information up front. That's okay. That's why we are so strong in the franchise community. Now, there are probably some holes in the legislation that need to be filled in, but let's not kill franchising by over-legislating. So I'm concerned about that. At the same time, concerned about making sure we're giving the prospective franchisee everything that they need to have to make a good decision. If we're not already there, we're not far from it, because I see it happening every day. But that scares me some. I don't want to bring people into franchising on a pipe dream, letting them think, oh, this is easy. Somebody already gave you the system. Buy one and go get it done. It's turnkey. It's not turnkey, and it's complex, as we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah, awesome. I think those are great insights. Well, John, thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited for us to eventually do round 2, hopefully in person.
Yeah.
Excited to come visit you down there, especially since we're not too far from each other. But this was great. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed your insights, and thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Tariq.